The Mac and Pete Project.
Well, I'm a little surprised, and I feel like I may have been a little bit too harsh last week, but I'm still holding that little bit of caution because it was exciting, but we had very little plot progression. But I I think this is just going to work well as like a 10-hour movie. So we'll see what happens when we get closer to the finish line. What
All
were
right,
your
so
thoughts?
all right, Well, I said this last week about Voyager that at least Voyager was still Voyager. It was still Star Trek. So when I was watching the episode, it reminded me of Voyager writing.
Okay. In what way?
Specifically, the episode that popped into my head. Do you remember when, and I don't remember the context because, of course, Voyager was not one of the ones that I watched 85,000 times over and over again,
Mhm.
probably about 5,000. Um, do you remember the episode where I specifically remember Tom Paris and Tuvok? They went back in time somewhere and they met Silverstone, Jessica, no, what's her name? Her brother's the comedian. She's a comedian. And they were back in time in like
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
the
yeah. Sarah Silverman.
Sarah Silverman.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, watching that episode, the episode that popped into my head was that one. So I don't know
Probably
why my
next week's gonna be more like that since
it
it's gonna be a lot.
probably it's like I'm thinking this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to be like. So for me, uh, I didn't hate it. The first episode I genuinely liked. The second episode, it was good, but it wasn't to me as good as the first episode.
Okay.
But you're right. I was so overly cautious, and what I really appreciated in this episode was particularly the banter between Q and Picard.
What is this?
This? This is home.
I wanted to talk about that just a little bit because at the beginning, it just seemed it seemed a little bit off, and it's like he's usually more collected. I want to say. I mean, he's always puzzle like, but he was just speaking in such riddles and that almost nothing was making sense.
More
And
so
it got
than
to the,
usual.
yeah, and it got to the point where Picard's like, "What's wrong with you? Like, is Q having like a mental breakdown?"
Q, you are not well.
Because that's kind of
So,
what the gist I got by the end of their encounter.
and the thing I like about that is there is genuine continuity between TNG and Voyager of that thought process. I mean, they went through a civil war in Voyager. They were afraid what would happen if a Q would kill themselves. So there's continuity, there is pretense, there is plot behind it. Now, do I think that they necessarily know that? I
So it's interesting you bring that up because Paramount Plus just put out a video this week on everything you need to know about Q. So it talks about his early days
Okay.
in TNG, the Civil War on Voyager, and for some reason they skipped over Deep Space Nine when Benjamin Sisko punched him.
You hit me. Picard never hit me.
I'm not Picard.
Indeed not. You're much easier to provoke. How fortunate for me.
Picard would never do that. Well, I'm not Picard.
So,
Um,
and I think the only reason they did that because it's like, it's supposed to view this as this uh, omnipotent being, and it's
if
like,
somebody
oh,
punches him in the
if you have a
face, it would
human
go against
punching him, it's like, oh,
that.
that's just a joke now. So,
Yeah,
and and then just the subtle callback of when he does slap Picard, his nose started bleeding.
I have had enough of your stupid patronizing.
And I've had enough of your obstinance.
So that just reminds me at the end of the encounter with the first encounter with the Borg.
But I think the lesson could have been learned without the loss of 18 members of my crew.
If you can take a little bloody nose, maybe you ought to go back home and crawl under your bed. It's not safe out here.
When Picard's like, surely we could have learned this lesson without the lost lives of 17 members of the crew or something. And Q's like, oh, it's dangerous out here. If you can't handle a little bloody nose, you should just go back home. And it's funny, he's home with a bloody nose now.
It would, so let me say it in this way. If when we get to the end of the series, which they've announced that season 3 is going to be the end of Picard. So I don't know how I feel about that right now, because if it subtly gets better all the way to, I'm going to be upset. But if it just
pull it
flounders, if it flounders and dies, then I'm not going to be upset. So if there was, if they went back with all of our complaints and all of our concerns during season 2, when they were writing, and they were like, let's try and make the canon people, the original Trekkies, happy, along with the new people. Let's see if we can meld it to a point to where there might not be, oh, this is Star Trek, or, oh, this is new sci-fi. If they tried to do that, I would be very, not just appreciative, I would be impressed. So if they did the forethought to bring that idea all the way from season 3 from TNG, I would be very impressed. I would be over the moon. Do I think that's the case? We'll see. Well, I will be optimistic, and we will see. But I did really appreciate the banter between Picard and Q. Also, a lot of little Easter eggs when it came to his little menagerie of skulls. You know, we have General Martok, Chancellor Martok, Gul Dukat. I mean, who else? Who else? Theric.
I'm just going to pretend the Ferengi skull was the Grand Negus. So that had been a hard one to conquer, Wallace Shawn.
Unless it was Morn. Not Morn. Nob's dad. Wrong.
No, I'm going to say it was before that.
He never got the chance. So, yeah, it was good. There was, what was your favorite part of the show?
I don't know if I really have a favorite part, but
Okay.
I kind of just want to catch the audience up on, in case they haven't seen it, but they probably should see it if they've seen this. But essentially, Q has removed Picard from the Stargazer explosion and basically put them in an alternate reality. And
along with the crew, the 7 cast members, or however.
Yeah. And he says, this is not a lesson to be learned. It's a penance, and you have to fix it. But you're not. Of course, I'm not going to have you do this alone. Referring to the other cast members, and basically we find out everyone wakes up in this alternate reality where it's no longer the Federation of Planets; it's the Confederation of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And Picard's a war-raging general. 7 is the president of the Confederation. Rios is fighting on the front lines. Agnes is, of course, doing, Borg research. And just to get Elnor in there, he's a rebel that was captured by Raffi. So, of course, everyone realizes this isn't their planet, and they just all end up coming together.
Right.
For Eradication Day.
So it's important to note, in other Treks that we've seen, for this to make any sense, it's usually one person that knows, just like cause and effect. They all figure it out, but they have no pre-existing knowledge until the end, where they figure it out as one. Well, because Q transported them to this point, the only one that really knows how it happened is the Borg Queen, of a general idea of when this timeline, when this reality came to be compared to the one that they came from.
because she's able to sense a disturbance in the timeline that it's been broken. Which, thinking about yesterday's Enterprise, which they name drop earlier in the episode, I thought Guinan was going to play that role because she has that
Right.
ability to know when things are off. But I guess
Well,
she was just a one episode cameo.
the best part about Q and Picard's banter for me was the name dropping of all those previous episodes. This isn't yesterday's Enterprise. He's name dropping episodes through there, and it's just I'm loving every minute of it.
How quaint, how provincial, how yesterday's Enterprise of you.
Yeah, I'm surprised they weren't like Q who, or or that's quite Cupid of you, or how about those inner lights?
Did he say tapestry though?
I don't think so. I don't
For
recall.
some reason, but he said in the mirror darkly.
Yes, he did. I'm talking about trying to remember exact words from scripts. I spent forever scanning episode 1, looking for Hawking radiation, and I could not find the scene.
He
And I'm
couldn't
like,
find it.
did I imagine this? So I just had to skip over it because I'm like, oh, they'll just take my word for it.
I remember them saying Hawking
Okay.
radiation in
Yeah.
in the latter half of episode 1. So, but yeah.
So this
Yeah,
is interesting because it's like almost mirror. It's almost like finally TNG's doing a mirror universe episode.
one could argue that because of what happened in the timeline, it forced the primary timeline to be a mirror universe.
Right.
Maybe that was the change. I'm curious of whatever happened in 2024 to make it that way. One thing in Star Trek they've never.
It's going to have something to do with a Noonien Song ancestor because they got Brent Spiner in 2024.
I would make that assumption as well, unless what we see is a later episode when they come back in time. So I don't know. It's there's a lot to be done now. I mean, I'm impressed that going from how pitiful the first season was to this, I am impressed. I will say that I'm impressed. I'm not over the moon, but I am impressed at the changes.
Did you get excited when Seven was supposed to have a briefing with General Sisko?
I was like, Ben's here. So yes.
Like, no, they couldn't get Avery Brooks back. He's
too busy being a professor. Yeah, I did get a little excited. I assumed it was going to be a name drop. Otherwise, we would have heard way before when they were filming that Avery was on set. You know how everybody is now. Look who's on set. Look who's back. I don't know. But I was pleasantly surprised by this episode overall. What do you have any misgivings about this episode? Is there something that was like cringe?
That's the weird thing. I don't think there was. I just wanted a little bit more plot progression. That's all. I wanted to at least start the travel back in time.
So you and I are at the same point right now. I was trying so hard to find something wrong and I didn't. Okay.
Yeah, I want to say I wasn't, because after last week, it's like I wasn't trying to find anything wrong. I'm like, I'm gonna just try and enjoy this.
Well, see
what sets me off.
When I review stuff, typically I do 2 viewings. I'm going to sit there and enjoy it and not think about it, and then write down how I feel, and then I go through and I nitpick. When I nitpick through this, there wasn't anything, and you brought it up. And I think the reason this is because of the accelerated season, because you only have 10 episodes. The reason I felt like this was kind of drawn out, kind of slow.
Isn't it ironic you're saying it's accelerated, but it's going so slow?
Yeah, I mean, because you're condensed into the 10 episodes, so you have to get through your in a certain amount of time. So what I felt like in this episode was in the season before, instead of going through the story and really enjoying it, we went through it like that. What just happened? There was no character development. There was no story development.
I feel like much like the last season, this season, if you gave it to the old TNG writers, to be like, "Oh yeah, we could do this in a 2-part episode."
Oh yeah, yeah. I had that feeling. I mean,
So
um,
I'm hoping this season has more substance once we, get everything rolling and everything up to speed.
I mean, hypothetically, if they were going to do an old style Trek, I could foresee this happening. Let's say 2 episodes to get the ball rolling. You could do 3 2-parters or 2 3-parters that have one overarching story, but 2 separate main
Yeah,
storylines.
because I believe Discovery season 2 did that pretty well, or I shouldn't say pretty well.
They
That's
did
what
that. They
they
didn't do it
attempted to
well.
do, right? I didn't. So just a reminder to the audience: to this date, I've only watched season 1 of Discovery, and I was like, I'm done, I'm out. And then I've only watched reviews on season 2, and then I have no idea what season 3 and 4 are doing. So,
I'm up to date on my Discovery. Even though I swore I was going to stop watching after Michelle Yeoh left. Um, it was one of those
why
Discovery
couldn't
finally found it.
why couldn't the show have just been about her as captain? That would have been great. I was so excited with that first episode, and then they killed her. And I'm
So
like,
here's honestly, Pete. I know you've said like you've seen her in other stuff. Um, Green, what's her name? The lead.
I
Burnham.
yeah, I can't think of the actress's name.
Okay, I remember you saying that you've seen her in other things. Okay, I have yet to see her in something else. Her acting. I don't want to blame the writers because I see other actors in Discovery with what they're given do more with little.
I
And
think
I
you can put
see,
a lot on the direction as well.
okay, so let's say it's a 50-50 split because I, for a lead in a television show,
Sonequa, right?
Green, something Green.
I'm gonna just
But
type in
anyway,
Burnham quick. Go ahead.
I feel as if for the lead of a television show, she is severely inept. She could
Uh,
be,
we got all the
yes,
names except for one. Sonequa Martin Green.
there you go. Three names, got two of the three. I feel pretty good about that. Yeah, I do not feel like she is the lead of it. She was I was fine with her supporting as a commander. I mean, Saru even feels like more of a lead and commander. That's the extraterrestrial we've never heard of. That's the biggest problem with that show is her acting ability, her acting chops, in my opinion. Then you put in a bad storyline. Then you put in ridiculous special effects. I mean, it could have been.
So for
But
me,
anyway, this is
story
Picard.
story trumps acting abilities in my bad
Story,
story is always going to
story
be
trumps that.
yeah. But yeah, I don't think we have too much more to say about this episode other than
I know.
where do you think we're going next week? Because I know last week I already predicted we would be in LA, but obviously we're not. I did predict a slingshot around the sun, so I got that one right. And since they don't have a Spock, they got the Borg
They
Queen to
have a
do the
queen.
calculations. So
Um,
I just love how Picard's like there are cruder ways for time to to travel through time.
so I don't know about the next episode, but I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say this is where they're going. I think their redemption, their penance, is in how they treated the Borg.
Yeah, because we don't really know how they've been treated the past 20 years. or
Correct.
how that haunts, because
So
we know that they found like damaged vessels, and have been able to reclaim technology. So maybe there is another big war after the Dominion War that finally put the Borg at bay.
correct. So we know that in Voyager that the transwarp conduits were crippled. Okay. We also know that there was some temporal shenanigans, screwing with the timeline because you brought 26th, 27th century technology back to the 24th century because of Admiral Janeway in the alternate timeline. And it's also clever to note that the same comm badges used in the alternate timeline have been used in this timeline. And in any Star Trek that we've seen before, they've always made a distinction between comm badges. I don't know if it was a stylistic thing, but it is good to note that might come back in the future. I don't know. But I do believe that it has something to do with the Borg and
Okay.
how they've been treated. But
And
the next thing I want to get at is I think the next episode, we're going to start seeing the Borg Queen and her humanity, her personality. We're going to see this character start building compassion and empathy for the Borg. That's where I think it's going. So we left the episode where the husband of the president comes with Federation security. I think one of two things is going to happen. Their escape's going to be foiled, and we're going to do part of the episode getting back to the ship, getting it out of dry dock, and having a little shootout type of we're stealing the Enterprise moment, and then fly around the sun, and then introduce to LA. That would probably upset you even more because you want to be in LA, Pete. Now, the other thing is it could
not
be.
really. I don't want to be there, but I'm forced to be there.
But you're forced to be there. The other thing could be the Borg Queen transports them off or gets because she's now taken over the ship and she saves them. And then we go into so the first 15 minutes might be that. And then we'll spend the rest of the time in LA. So I see that going two ways in the next episode. But I do think the Borg Queen is going to be paramount in the next episode.
So I realized this while editing. We did not talk about this last week, and I watched someone else's review, and it quite possibly could bring the whole show down.
What's that?
The Borg entity that was on the bridge of the Stargazer. A lot of us assumed it was like, oh, it's a new Borg Queen. But right before they get sent, before Q snaps them away, she says to Picard, "Look up," which is the same thing Picard's mother said to him as a child.
Correct.
So is Picard's mother going to be abducted and assimilated by the Borg? Is she the new Borg Queen?
So I'm gonna say this, Pete, because we've already seen flashbacks of Picard's mother, and it isn't Susan, the lady that plays the Borg, who's done other stuff on Star Trek. It wasn't her. Okay, so that's one. But two, remember
the Borg Queen always changes when she's destroyed.
That's one. That's true. But as the shared collective, they know all of Picard's thoughts and experiences.
Yeah. So let's hope. Let's hope.
So I mean, there's two ways to look at that. Maybe and the other thing is we're still making the assumption we're in the prime timeline. We're in the canon timeline. So something could have happened.
That's the only thing we can assume.
But there's a lot going on to say. Well, then again, it's also the writers that don't know the extent of what's going on. But what I'm saying is, every time that they change the Borg Queen, yes, it could just be the physical body, as opposed like almost like a transfer of consciousness into a new body. It could be that. I mean, it could be a whole slew of things that might be explained. I'm not sure.
I'm just hoping they don't do something incredibly dumb and just have like Picard's mother being abducted through time to be assimilated, and now she's the new Borg queen, and he has to choose between ending the Borg once and for all or saving his mother.
Yeah,
So I just hope they don't do something big and dumb.
I'm hoping, and I'm going to say this, that what I think it was, the Borg were so desperate for help or whatever's going on, because what's going on in the present, because it's something else that you have to ask. What was going on in the present that the Borg were almost gone? That there's this break in space and time where this Borg vessel comes out,
Right.
and all of a sudden the Borg Queen shows up, and they are specifically asking for not Locutus, they are asking for Picard.
Right.
And
And
then she
I
says
know
something that,
I know we would all love for this to make sense and everything, but just remember who we're dealing with,
and that's my
and
fear.
how the mystery box is used to drive the plot along, no matter if it makes sense or not. So
Right. I'm hoping that the writers of season 2 stepped back and said, listen, enough with mystery boxing. Let's have a morality, an idea of an episode, a few episodes, collective episodes, the whole season, what have you. But let's have a purpose and meaning towards the end, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a thought, whether it's penance, whatever it is. Let's have a point to it and use these certain devices to get there. I'm fine with that. Let's do that. That's Star Trek.
well, let's hope for that, and we'll see you again next week.
See you then.